Hello friends, welcome to the channel IT Simplified. Hopefully everybody had a good start to the year 2022. In today's video on Azure, I'm here to discuss and explain what Azure App Service is, how it relates to the App Service Plan, what are the different tiers associated with it, and finally we're going to end this with a brief demo and deploy a quick app service. So let's start with understanding what Azure App Service is. Now, as you know that when it comes to cloud, there are three ways you can consume your services. You can do this with infrastructure, platform, or software as a service. Now, when it comes to Azure App Service, it falls under the platform as a service. So it's basically a service which allows you to host your web applications, REST APIs, and mobile backend. And the best part of this one is that you get the framework and the language of your choice. So whichever way you want to control and manage your application, you can use it. Some of the languages that are supported is .NET framework. You can use Ruby, Python, Node.js, just to name a few. And all the other features that you typically associate cloud with, right? Whether it's security, load balancing, auto scaling, all these things are part of Azure App Service and it's highly scalable. That's what Azure App Service is in a nutshell. But the question arises, where does App Service Plan sits and how it relates to Azure App Service? So let's take that also. In simple term, Azure App Service is nothing but the compute that you're going to associate your web application, say, for. Like, as I said, that it's a platform as a service, right? But in the back end, there's still a server which gets deployed, and that server will have some sort of CPU, RAM, and storage. And when you pick an app service plan, that is what you are specifying, like what kind of CPU, RAM, storage based on your web application need that you want to associate with that. Now, when you specify an app service plan, you also need to define what OS you want, right? It can be Windows or Linux, and also which region you want to deploy your web app to, right? You want to deploy in Canada, India, Australia, what region, and obviously what tier. And I'm going to explain the tiers in a moment, right? There are different tiers based on different pricing. Obviously, it depends upon what is your web app requirements are, but you need to specify that within the app service plan. But in simple term, again, it is nothing but the kind of compute you want to associate with web app. Now, one question I get typically asked is that, can I have multiple web apps within the same service plan? So if I deploy this first web app, can I have the second or the third or the fourth on the same app service plan? So answer for that one is yes, you can absolutely deploy that, right? But you also need to be mindful of the fact that what is your web application requirement? Because just remember, all these app service plan, there is a certain CPU and RAM and storage associated. And say this service app service number one is consuming all that, there is nothing left for the second, third, and fourth. So it might impact how this application, the one that you have already deployed within the app service plan, or the one that you want to deploy for the future, it will have an impact. So yes, you can do that too, but you also need to be mindful of the fact that what kind of compute resources are associated with that app service plan. You might need to maybe upgrade, because that's another thing. You can always move between the app service plan. If you are not getting the right performance, you can always upgrade to the next level tier. Now, talking about the tier, it can be divided into three. Now, you have a dev test, then you have the production, and you have the isolated. And as the name suggests, basically, your dev test is just for the testing purposes. production and isolated, you're going to use that for production environment, right? And in that one, there are also certain subcategories too. For example, within production, you have the standard and the premium tier. And again, higher you move, you get more CPU, RAM, storage. But just to tell you the difference between the two, typically premium tier, it uses the solid state storage versus standard tier, which uses the regular magnetic drive. And obviously you get more compute power too, more ACUs or Azure Compute Unit. And then you also come across a scenario in which maybe because of the performance requirement and for the compliance reason, you want to deploy these app services in a specific virtual network. Now, the isolated tier will not only will give you the compute segregation, but also you can deploy this in your own virtual network, very similar to when you deploy any IaaS environment too. You can route the traffic, you can have more control how your web application get accessed. All those things are also available. But these are typically the three options available. And again, as I said, that it is nothing but the kind of compute you want to give to for hosting your web application. Now, also based on what option you choose, there are going to be some features that get associated with that, right? So you might need to have maybe you want to have your own custom domain. So those are the features that you get. You can apply that based on what option, dev test, production, or isolated. So some of the features that you can associate it is custom domain, auto scaling. Then you have load balancer. That's for traffic manager, which is a kind of load balancer. The backup, the deployment slots. And don't worry about some of the terms if you don't understand. In the coming videos, I'm going to explain further on this. But all these features you also get as part of these different app service plans. So again, Azure App Service is a service for hosting your web application, mobile backend REST API, and you can use any of your favorite framework and language, and you get all these different features associated with that. An app service plan is basically the kind of compute you want to associate with your web application, and there are different options. Actually, let me go to the portal. As you can see, I'm already logged in. I'm going to type in for app service plan. Search for. If I go and click on create app service plan, I can go through filling up the different tabs here. But the thing that I want to show you is the different SKUs inside. So let me go and expand that. So as I said, these are the three options available: dev test, production, and isolated. And if I further go to see additional option, you can see under dev test, I have the free tier and I have the basic option B1, B2, and B3. You can see under the free option, I get 1 gig of memory and 60 minutes of free compute. And with that, you get 1 gig of storage. As I move up, I get B1, B2, and B3. You can see I get 100 total ACU, which is basically Azure Compute Unit. If you have used Azure Infrastructure as a Service, you might have come across that there are different series of machine. In the backend, it is using an A series compute equivalent. But something to point out, as you go up in the series, you get more compute power. So basically B2 is 200 ACU versus 100 ACU. So you get double the compute power in B2 as compared to B1, and same thing with the B3. And you can see you also get more storage as you move up the ladder. But one thing also want to point out, if I go under the free option, there was no features, right? But if I go, say, for example, B1, you get some more feature like custom domain. If you want to manually scale up to 3 instances, you get that too. Now, if I move that to the production option, you see I get the S tier and I also get the P tier, which is nothing but standard and the premium tier, right? You can see that in S tier, I get A series versus in P tier, I typically get the D series machine in the backend. And with that, you also get more options in terms of feature. You can add your custom domain, obviously. You can also auto scale up to 20 instances. You get staging slots or the deployment slots. You get daily backup, you get traffic manager to route the traffic. And as you can see, as you move up, you get more storage. Same thing in the premium option. You get 250 here. You can auto scale up to 20 instances, right? So all those options are available, and obviously in the isolated tier 2, you get to deploy. Actually, if I go and click on create new app service environment, because you need to create one, I can show you that you can deploy this web application in your own virtual network. So if I just move the tab, you can see it is asking for my virtual network and a subnet, very similar to when you deploy a VM in the backend, right? So you can get that kind of segregation, the kind of compute you want, again, depending upon your web application requirement, right? So hopefully that gives you an idea about what app service and app service plan is. So let's do this way. Let's quickly go and deploy an app service. I'm going to pick that, and let's go and click create app service. I'm going to create a new resource group. Feel free to give name, make sure that it has to be unique. And I'm going to use the code, and the runtime stack I'm going to use for this demonstration is ASP.NET version 4.8. And operating system, I'm going to use Windows, and region also where you want to deploy your web application. You can create your own, give a name for the app service plan, which, as I explained you, is nothing but the compute that you want to associate. Well, let me name it also. And here you can change the size. By default, it is using standard, but if you want, you can always upgrade to. So, say for example, if you start with S1 tier, and your web application maybe is not behaving the way you want, you can always upgrade that to a premium tier, right? And there are also different options available, version 2 and version 3. And also, sometimes there is also a question asked, right? How do I know that, it is the right tier for me? So within this also, you can see that Microsoft provides you how much compute CPU it is getting used, how much RAM it is get consumed. That gives you an idea about once you deploy the web application. And as I said, that you can always move up and move down as per your requirement. For this demonstration, I'm going to use the S1 tier. Let's go and click on apply. I'm going to use the default. If you want, you can enable the application insight, but I'm not going to do for this demonstration. Let's review and create. And let's create this web application. The deployment was complete. Let's go to the resources. And you can see that I get the URL. And as I mentioned, in the S1 tier, definitely you can have your own custom domain. But let me go and expand this. And you can see that I get the default web page over here. So it's as simple as that. It just took a couple of seconds to deploy this app service, because it's a platform as a service in the back, and you don't need to spin up any VM for you. It's all taken care by Microsoft for you. But let's go a step further. I'm going to make certain changes to this front page. For that, I'm going to use the Visual Studio, and for that, I'm using the Community Edition. If you want to do what I'm doing, you can also go and download the Community Edition. It's absolutely free. I'm going to go and launch it. And if you want, you can make changes to the code as per your requirement, right? So I'm going to go and click on Create a New Project. And one thing I want to point out that I'm also logged in with the same credential that I'm logged in into the Azure. So whatever changes I make over here, it get replicated onto that web application. So let me pick ASP.NET. And feel free to give the project name. I'm going to go and click on Next. Let's go and click on Create. All right, so what I'm going to do is, from the right side under the Solution Explorer, I'm going to expand views. I'm going to go to the Home and open the index.html. Let's make a brief change here. I'm going to make, say, welcome Mahadev. And I'm going to go to my web application. Let's go and click on Publish. It is on Azure. Let's go and click on Next. And it's an Azure App Service Windows plan. And you can see because I'm already logged in with the same credential, it automatically pops up my resource group. This is the resource group that I have, and that I have the application, right, with the name Mahadev. Let me just go and click on finish. And I'm going to publish it. All right, so you can see that it was published successfully. So let's go on to the Azure portal and let's see if we are able to now see the changes that we made. So let me go back to the URL and here we go. Right, it's that easy. So with this, we now have a better understanding of what Azure App Service is, what are the different app service plan available. And we also saw a quick demo of how to spin up these services right from the Azure portal and make changes to it. Hopefully this was useful. Thanks for watching. Have a good day.